Welcome to The Point, a podcast by Apex Benefits and dedicated to employee benefits thought leadership. You can find more episodes for free on iTunes by searching The Point or Apex Benefits. Please rate, review, and subscribe to be the first to know about what we have in store for you. To learn more about Apex Benefits, please visit our website at www.apexbg.com or find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Let's get to the point together.
Welcome to The Point, Fort Wayne. I'm Kassee, Lamm, Benefits Strategist for Apex Benefits, and today I'm sitting down with Lisa Mungovan as well as my colleague Scott Long. Welcome to The Point, Fort Wayne, Lisa and Scott. If you would you just take a second and introduce ourselves for our listeners?
My name is Lisa Mungovan. I'm the owner of Mungovan HR Consulting, and I work primarily with small businesses in Northeast Indiana.
Thanks for joining us, Lisa. My name is Scott Long. As Kassee mentioned, I'm an executive advisor with Apex Benefits, working with employers of all types, privately held, higher education, predominantly in central Indiana and the northeast part of the state.
Scott and Lisa, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And Lisa, you're so experienced in the HR space with over 20 years of HR leadership. As Northeast Indiana has grown, how have you seen talent and recruitment change and evolve?
Well, when I first started in my career, I focused very much on the employer that I was working for. And back then it was newspaper ads only, display ads and single column ads. And as our region has evolved, we have more of a regional focus. So the recruiters and the talent acquisition people at the various companies are still focused on their respective companies, but their regional efforts to market the area, the various counties that we have in our region, the Northeast Indiana Regional Partnership has created programs and focused on Vision 2030. We have the Road to 1 million, which is to grow our population to at least 1 million. And so that is bringing that talent to this respective area. And that's not just college talent, but it's also skilled laborers for our CNC positions and our welders and all of the service industries as well. Also, Northeast Indiana Human Resource Association, which is NIRA, which is a branch of SHRM, it has grown in its focus with educating not only their members, but also networking events to help that community do that. When NIRA first started, it was PIRA, and it was strictly content meetings, and you went and you listened and you left, and that was almost the only outlet for HR people to go to network. There weren't other opportunities. Now, with the invention of so many things, we've got automated applicant tracking systems, and which pose challenges for applicants because everything's keyword search. And so when an applicant's resume doesn't match what the company's ad says and their system, if they don't change the default filters, if they don't add additional words, an applicant can be disqualified in less than a second. Previously, we all HR people used judgment. We looked at paper resumes, and if someone had things listed on their resume, but there were things that were missing, but it was aligned with what they had, an HR person could say, I'm going to still interview them because I think they already have these pieces just because they didn't list them. And so, that's a new challenge. Newspapers have been replaced by Facebook and LinkedIn and all of the other different types of job sourcing sites. And prior to COVID, the employers were trying everything. I mean, they were being creative as to how they were getting their jobs listed out there because we had a lot of openings, and they were trying feverishly to fill those positions. And so those that had never advertised on Facebook may have put just the word out that they had a position open. The interview process has also changed. It used to be we called everybody in for an interview. Now there's telephone interviews and pre-recorded interviews and Skype or Zoom or whatever interviews of candidates. Individuals, again, that don't have access to good internet access or to computers have that as a challenge because they can't convey that. It has to be a telephone interview, which if that's what it is, at least they get to talk to someone about their particular skills and credentials.
Really helpful. Really. So, Kassee, let's make sure that we get links in the description for the Vision 2030 and the references that that we've talked about that Lisa has mentioned. Thank you, Lisa. I know the topic that we wanted to discuss was recruiting and hiring veterans, and as I think about some of the things that you've mentioned, just the change within interview processes that have slowly been evolving, and certainly with COVID-19, that's maybe forced even more change, which has been really interesting to witness. I'm curious, as it relates to recruiting and hiring veterans, what are some specific things that employers can do to ensure that there's a positive experience for the veteran through the as a candidate, through the candidate pool and through the interview process and eventually onboarding?
Well, I want to quickly just explain what we haven't done well.
Okay.
NYRA has had in place at least 7-8 years efforts to attract and retain veterans. And so we've had hiring events, and we've had in November recognition of veteran-friendly employers. And those changes have been good efforts, I would say, but they haven't really produced a lot. The veterans who were already placed were content with the jobs that they already held. So when we had the hiring events, they didn't show up for those hiring events. We had plenty of employers. The last one we had was 83 employers, and it wasn't successful.
Yeah.
So in 2018, we informally surveyed the NYRA members to find out what they felt, and they were most of them were focused on wanting to hire, very eager to hire, but the retention, they didn't understand how to interview them, they didn't understand how to find them, etc. And so we stopped holding the veterans hiring events. NYRA did. Senator Banks still has an event every year, normally out at Purdue Fort Wayne. I'm not sure if he's having one this year, but I organized a team of veterans that helped me develop training, and it's called Recruiting, Hiring, and Retaining Military Veterans. We launched that back in 2019 as our first pilot. But some of the things that I learned personally about the whole process is things that were being done poorly. So veteran job fairs, where the jobs were offered, were stereotypical of those who served in the military, like security, transportation, low-skill jobs, especially if it was an infantry person rather than an officer. The job postings and automated applicant systems that inadvertently filter out veterans. They may create a resume that's in military verbiage rather than civilian verbiage, and the ads are written in civilian verbiage. Not using skill translators, which are like the military occupation code, to identify transferable skills that are in non-military employment job descriptions, assuming the veteran will find the employer. So lack of advertising in the right places, at the military bases, actually getting to the military bases. There's a lot of security issues, and you think you're getting to the right person, and that person has either moved to another position, and so they're not the key contact, or there's other resources that you have to connect to. So there's a lot of layers as it relates to that. Not having a plan in place once the veteran has been hired and actually onboarding. So the onboarding has not been good. And it has to do with what they're coming from and going into. And then claiming to be veteran friendly, despite having little or no programming services in place to demonstrate that. So, supply and demand prior to COVID was a chain, causing some challenges. There were supply needs, but those that were getting out of the military didn't necessarily meet those demands based on paper. They had the skills, the leadership, eager to learn, quick, to learn, because that's what they did in the military, but it wasn't reflective in their applications and their resumes. So things that the employers can do to strategize is to consider those transferable skills and look at what the veterans have gone through training-wise and identify that. So instead of having a very structured interview, having a conversation with a veteran to better understand what they have done and to review the resume rather than asking all those set questions. Right. And then the person's trying to figure out how they can answer it and relate it to what they've been through. More verbiage on those automated systems. If their ad and their job description or whatever it is they've advertised, adding more words that mean the same thing that will help capture. And this is not just for veterans, it's for everybody. Reducing the filters. I know one of our defense contractors here in Fort Wayne has they have no filter at all on their automated systems. They have to look at every single application and resume so they don't miss individuals.
Right.
There are systems out there like ONET and Google Talent Solutions that has a military code section that provide words that have similar meaning that they could use as a resource. One of the things I learned was transitioning military typically know from 6 to 18 months that they're going to be getting out. Okay. Yeah. Well, if they start that early, even as little as 6 months, an employer is typically not going to hold a job for someone. Unless they're maybe expanding, they know in advance, and then they're willing to make that commitment. But it's worth the conversation, and so I think those are helpful hints. Also, there's a map, and I can get it to you. This was one that we showed in the training from the Army, and it identifies different bases that have different specialized training programs, advanced manufacturing, welding, and those types of things that the employers can actually target if that's what they're wanting skill-wise.
Yeah, I think our listeners really would like to see that map. That's a handful of really deep considerations, right? You've got to consider the transferable skills, and I think what I heard you say is kind of loosen the structure of the interview. It sounds like it's a bit of a language barrier. So really appreciate that insight.
Lisa, you also mentioned that some businesses claim to be veteran friendly, and maybe they aren't. How could a business become more veteran friendly?
Well, some key things. One is that the culture has to be one that is recognizing and valuing the military person in the first place. But in addition to that, it's also recognizing what they've come from. So for their culture, they've come from a structured environment. When they were told to be at a meeting that started at 8, it started at 8. They were there 10 till 8, and the meeting ended at 9. It ends at 9. Not where people just kind of keep just coming in a relaxing way, and the agenda goes on and on and on, or goals are set and then the dates come and go and people don't say anything about it. Communications are lacking. So they need to have a clear sense of purpose about what it is that they are being hired for. How does their job fit into the organization, the divisions, the purpose, the customers, all those different types of things. Chain of command is important in the military. And so understanding who to go to, maybe key contacts for key things, but what is that chain of command? And if the culture is more relaxed, helping the military person understand that, but still letting them know who their key people are so that they don't feel like they're violating the person that the people that they're supposed to be talking to. Language is an important thing, and I'm not talking about foreign languages, but right. There's acronyms and industry languages and standard operating procedures that are different in the military than what would be if they're hired into a specific type of a job. So helping them understand that as part of the onboarding process. The one thing I underestimated when I was working with this team is career pathways. In the military, you know what your next steps are. Most companies may have a general career path that they can explain to them, opportunities that if they want to do this, this is what they need to do in order to get to this position, or when a job opening gets posted, keep an eye on this. Very general compared to the military where it's very, very structured. I really think we need to educate our current employers on the difference between that military and civilian work culture. The more they appreciate that, the better it will help them. When I mentioned that we had veteran-friendly people, there are programs like the Medallion program that the U.S. government has, that there are a series of things that the company has to complete, and then they get a certificate or a plaque or something. There are programs in the United States where if you spend $5,000 to place an ad about being veteran friendly so that you are letting the veterans know that you are veteran friendly, they see right through that. I've talked with veterans about that and I've asked them about that. And so back in 2018, when we recognized veteran friendly employers with NYRA, it was a list of employers who said they were veteran friendly. And so everybody got a certificate. And feedback I got from some of our members that are really, really trying hard to put these types of systems in place, the word isn't offended. They just felt that they were special about what it was that they were doing. And then when they found out they were one of 240, that was diminished. Right. And it should be that way. So my team, Dr. Michael Kirshner from Purdue Fort Wayne, is an associate professor with organizational leadership and supervision. He's a veteran. He's on my team. He surveyed and did some research about veteran friendly. Our next step is to develop criteria that's realistic for the employers to reach to then become veteran friendly. It's not in place yet. The state of Indiana, SHRM, has a Veterans at Work certificate. It was my understanding it would take employers 10 hours to complete it. Michael took it in 7 minutes.
Wow.
So, oh, wow. Again, it just depends on what it is that they are completing. Just because they answer questions to get a certificate does not make them veteran friendly. It's these actions that make them veteran friendly.
Yep. Lisa, I'd like to circle back to the filters. So, and to dive a little deeper, I guess, could you share a little bit more about, what you're seeing? You mentioned there is someone local that's really taking a leadership role in reducing filters, eliminating filters. What are you seeing from, systems, whether it's payroll, HRIS, recruiting systems? What are you seeing that's working and what's not working?
Well, yeah, employers that have adjusted that automated system is helping both, veterans as well as any candidate to get through. The employers that understand the transition challenges, work with them on what those are. Having programs like mentor programs like Vet to Vet, if there's the possibilities of that. Military support groups, not just for the veterans, but for the families. There are parents who have children that are in the military. You have spouses that have someone who's deployed, or when they get back and they've gotten out, there's challenges as well for that. Employee assistance programs, I think, are good. When I worked at Poly High Salvador, we had an employee assistance program, and we had one of our guardsmen who was deployed 3 times when I was there. One was more for traditional military, but the 3rd time he was deployed to New Orleans for Katrina. And he started as, he was deputized in the Superdome. And so he was exposed to all of that. And then he was pulled for that to pull body bags when the levees broke. And when he came back, he was more affected by that because of it being Americans rather than being overseas. Our employee assistance program not only helped the supervisors help work with him, helped our employees, work with him as well. But at the time, we had 3 Vietnam veterans that came forward and said, let us give you some ideas as to how to work with him. We talked about questions to ask and not ask after he would get back from, Desert Storm and some of those types of things. So the more employers are available to understand that there may be an issue, and then how do we react? But ask the person, the military person, what is it that they need and what is it they don't need? We put together a gaylord of all kind of things, and we shipped it over to his troops so they could share. That was a nice thing to do. We didn't have to do that, but we had, snacks and all kind of things that we sent while he was gone. Now that's a guardsman. That's not someone that is full-time military, but veteran appreciation is an important thing. Yellow ribbon reintegration program. When someone is deployed and then they come back, there's that reintegration, and that not only affects the military person, but it also affects the family. And when they deploy, recognizing that the military may not pay for 2 months. And so now the family still has bills, but the individual, they don't have money coming in because there's a delay in process. Right now, the military, they're not sending their people for training like they usually do because of COVID. Some of the military who are not full-time are not getting paid. And so if they're not employed, their regular job is very, very important. One mean thing is that also they need to understand USERRA, which is the Uniform Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. Employers have things that they have to follow. When someone comes back, there are things that are required for them to place the person back in a like job, et cetera, and educating them on that. And we include that in the training we're doing.
I really appreciate that, especially the vet to vet, it's the idea of inclusive, right? So you're either forming vet to vet, peer support, but the idea of bringing in, Vietnam vet, that's a different aspect, I suppose. You're bringing someone in that's gone through the transition or the reintegration, but also, also now sustaining, life and back as a civilian, and that's powerful perspective, I suppose, for someone that's going through it today. I know, Kassee, you had some thoughts on not just recruiting but retention.
Yeah, so Lisa, what would you say, aside from, anything you've already shared, are there any best practices or strategies that you've seen to be successful in retaining a veteran as an employee?
Well, as I mentioned early on, our members for NYRA and other employers, that was the biggest struggle. Getting them to be hired was fine. The statistics show that many veterans leave their first job within the first year after being out. But a lot of it has to do with what I've already explained. If, the onboarding isn't thorough, if they are not clear, the culture is real open and vague and autonomous rather than very specific. It's not to say that they're not flexible and adaptable, because they definitely are. But when you don't have an organization where it's clear as to what those things are, they're going to not feel a part of it. They don't see where they are a part of as a contributor. And so, they will put up with it for a while, and they will try their best to, do whatever is assigned because that's what they're used to, but they will start looking for other opportunities. If the culture is not one of respect and you've got individuals who are motivated in other ways and are disrespectful to those individuals, again, they're not going to stay in an environment for which they don't feel that they're accepted. One thing that I didn't mention was there's a lot of resources in our region that are available to employers as well as to the families that I learned about when we did this training. And I've got a list of that if you would like to see that. Whether it's the vet center or the veteran service officer or the VA, everybody thinks VA is everything. Well, it's not. And I'm a member of the Northeast Indiana Military Assistance Network. And generally we meet on a monthly basis. We haven't been, but it includes all kind of organizations, Turnstone, the VA, Northeast Indiana-based Community Council. It's just there's a whole different group of members that come together on a monthly basis to talk about what they're doing and working on so that other people know about it and can tell people about it. There's stand downs where individuals come and are able to get haircuts and food and have all kind of resources as well. Those aren't necessarily resources for the employers to attend specifically, but they are things to get their veteran staff and their families to if they need those resources.
Yeah, I definitely think our listeners would want to see the list. If there's additional resources, we've captured quite a few this morning. And Lisa, we thank you very much for carving out the time and devoting your time and energy to sharing sharing this with our listeners.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Lisa.
You can find more episodes for free on iTunes by searching The Point or Apex Benefits. Please rate, review, and subscribe to be the first to know about what we have in store for you. To learn more about Apex Benefits, please visit our website at www.apexbg.com or find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Let's get to the point together.